Abracadabra. Remember being fascinated by magicians who can make things disappear? Well, menopause is like that. Magic. All sorts of things disappear at menopause. Welcome to Menopause Taylor. That's me. And welcome to this big, long series on how to manage your menopause your way. I teach you everything, absolutely everything about menopause and more. So this is video number 147, and it's part of the WHAM collection of videos. WHAM, what appears at menopause. And as you've already seen, a wide variety of things happen at menopause. Some things dry up, some things shrink, others grow, some sag, some get harder, and new things appear. And as indicated earlier, some things disappear. So this video is about the things that disappear. Many of the things that disappear fall in line with the symptoms you have at menopause. Others are related to the diseases that are associated with menopause. And a couple are related to social matters at menopause. If you're wondering why you need to watch this video, let me just say this. All women should be watching all my videos. This is the education women have always deserved. Go ask women how much education they received before menopause. Wham! Hit them over the head like a ton of bricks. I guarantee that they'll all say they received no education at all. And if you look from one woman to another, just like dominoes, they'll all say, me neither, me neither, me neither, me neither. So you need to watch all my videos in order, or get my book, or watch the whole series of webinars, whatever. But you deserve this education. So I'll just enumerate each thing that disappears at menopause, elaborating a bit, just a bit, on each item as I go along. Obviously, the first thing to disappear are your periods. And for most women, that's a hallelujah occurrence. Very few women actually like having periods. Now, you know there are exceptions to absolutely everything, right? And this is no different. Some women like their periods. But mostly, they like the significance of their periods and the fertility they represent. Not many of them like the actual bleeding. In any case, disappearance of your periods is generally a welcome event. Not so welcome is the disappearance of your sleep. Remember the first year after having a baby? Statistically, you lose 2.9 hours of sleep every night in that first year of your child's life. That's 20.3 hours per week, which is 87 hours per month, which is 1,058 hours per year. Well, the statistics for menopause are not as well defined, but there's a lot of similarity in the fact that menopause wreaks havoc on your sleep, and a lot of your sleep simply disappears. And whenever you don't get enough sleep, what happens? You can't remember things. So one of the most direct consequences of lost sleep is lost memory. And it's the strangest thing. You go upstairs and you forget what you came upstairs for. You think of something one minute and you can't remember what you were thinking about the very next minute. It's enough to make you think you're going crazy or getting Alzheimer's. Well, you're not going crazy, and this is not a sign of Alzheimer's. It's a sign of estrogen loss. When your estrogen disappears, so does your witty, snappy memory. Oh, and when your sleep and memory disappear, so does your temper. You become irritable. You lose your cool with little provocation. This disappearance of your even temper may be on an interpersonal level or even on a personal level. In other words, you may blow up at other people for little things, or you may just be angry with yourself, your situation, and life in general. Do you remember that movie, Steel Magnolias? Shirley MacLaine plays a character of the town curmudgeon. She's mad at everyone all the time, and I think she depicts the effect of estrogen loss. Now, here's a disappearance about which you may be unaware. Your ability to reject alcohol disappears. Most women don't realize that menopause is linked to an increase in alcohol consumption. This is one of the things women don't talk about, but they should, because this is a huge problem at both peri and postmenopause. Craving alcohol, craving it so much that your ability to resist it disappears. Peri and postmenopausal women drink all day long. They can't resist. Estrogen disappears, and so does your ability to resist alcohol. Next is your soft skin. Wham! It just goes away. Suddenly it's dry, rough, and wrinkled. Why? You know the answer, don't you? It's because magical estrogen disappears. I covered this in greater detail in the video on what dries up at menopause. Watch it if you haven't already. Oh, and along with your soft skin, you see your hair disappear. Women hate this, but here's why it happens. You know how men start balding and just lose more and more hair over time? That's a function of high levels of testosterone. Well, women have estrogen levels in excess of testosterone until postmenopause. But at postmenopause, when estrogen disappears, your testosterone level is much higher relative to your estrogen level, at least for the first couple of years. Here you can see it on this graph. You see this right here? This is where your estrogen is high. But then when your estrogen disappears, look, your testosterone is higher than your estrogen for this couple of years. On average, it's about from age 51 to 53, and that's when women notice most of their hair loss. So you see here that estrogen has just plummeted. Wham! It's gone. And this pink line of Play-Doh is the estrogen. But notice that your testosterone is still significantly higher than your estrogen. It hasn't disappeared yet. So that's why most women lose their hair then. Your testosterone doesn't reach its lowest level until about 2 years into your postmenopause. And while you may continue to notice hair loss, it usually is not as drastic after that. Okay, now for the big ticket item. Vaginal everything. One of the most obvious disappearing acts at menopause is your vaginal health. I told you before that this is the most bothersome physical symptom of menopause. Notice that I use the term vaginal health. And that's because everything that made your vagina functional as a vagina disappears at menopause. There are 3 qualities that make your vagina functional. Its thick walls, the wrinkles in those walls, and its lubrication. At menopause, wham, they all disappear. Your vagina is heavily dependent on estrogen. It loves the stuff. Without it, everything you consider to be normal about your vagina disappears. So, the thick wall disappears. The wrinkles disappear. And the lubrication disappears. I'll demonstrate each of these. This represents how thick your vaginal wall is before menopause. It's thick like a big, thick athletic sock. And this represents how thin your vaginal wall is after menopause. It's thin like a nylon stocking. This is a big, thick, woolly tube sock. This is a sheer, thin nylon stocking. This one handles friction just fine. This one tears with even the slightest friction. There's even a big old run in it to represent tearing or a laceration with any friction. Now for the wrinkles. This is what your vagina is like before menopause. All wrinkled like this. This is what your vagina is like after menopause. Not a single wrinkle. This one is like an accordion. This one is taut like a poor little piece of cardboard. This one can stretch and lengthen to accommodate an erect penis. It fits in there just fine, no problem. This one is stiff and unable to stretch or lengthen and unable to accommodate anything. Now for lubrication. This is how lubricated your vagina is before menopause. It's like a sponge that's full of water. This is how dry it is after menopause. It's a piece of sandpaper. This one is juicy, 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 Lucy. This one is dry as a bone. This one makes everything glide easily over the surface because it's so lubricated. This one resists movement of anything on its surface and causes tearing instead of gliding. So at menopause, your vaginal walls go from thick to thin. Your vaginal wrinkles disappear. Your vaginal lubrication disappears. And as I taught you in video 142, the end result is that your vagina shrinks. It disappears. Your vagina is disappearing at menopause. When you feel that itching, it's disappearing. Can you believe we're not finished yet? The next thing that disappears is your waistline. In video 143, I taught you that your abdomen grows at menopause. And as your abdomen grows, your waistline disappears. This is why our girly figures disappear at menopause. Instead of an hourglass shape, we get more of an apple shape. Our waist measurement gets closer to our hip measurement. Oh, and your urinary control disappears too. It gets more and more difficult to hold your urine, and you leak. You need to know where the ladies' room is at all times, and you urinate before going anywhere. And your urinary control disappears precisely because your estrogen disappears. If you haven't watched video 144 on what sags at menopause, please do so. You will understand fully exactly why you leak. And the last symptom-like thing that disappears is your sex drive. Here's that graph of your hormones again. See here where your testosterone practically disappears? That's when your sex drive disappears. It's usually about 2 years after your last period. Most of your sex drive is determined by testosterone, not estrogen. Now, what about the long-term disease stuff? What disappears that results in a life-threatening situation? Your bones. Disappearance of your bones is called osteoporosis. This is what your bone looks like before menopause. This is what it looks like after menopause. Or maybe you prefer a more sophisticated representation. This represents what your bone looks like before menopause. It's nice and dense if I take it apart. This is what your bone looks like after menopause. And if I take this apart, you can see that it's not as dense. It's collapsing. It's disappearing. Or maybe you prefer this representation. Here's a wheel of different kinds of bone. This is normal bone. This is osteoporosis. Normal bone, osteoporosis. You see how much more bone there is here than there is here. That is the difference. Disappearing bone. Your bone quite literally disappears, and it's all because your estrogen disappears. With your brain, it's the same story. Here's the picture I showed you in video 142 on what shrinks at menopause. Well, the very reason your brain shrinks is because it's disappearing. Purely, simply, and unfortunately, you literally lose brain tissue. That's what leads to Alzheimer's disease. Why? Because disappearance of estrogen once again. Okay, now for the social matters that disappear. Of course, the most obvious is your children, right? Which leads to disappearance of a lot of your identity and your roles. This is why empty nest syndrome is such a big deal. It really leaves a big hole for a lot of women. You know, we started this video with disappearance of your periods, which is a positive thing about menopause. Let's end it on that same note. Your insecurity disappears at menopause. Have you ever noticed how secure menopausal women are? They're really more secure than ever before. I like to call it menopower. So despite all these disappearing acts, some of them are for the better. Okay, here's a summary of all the things that disappear at menopause. Your periods, your sleep, your memory, your even temper, your rejection of alcohol, your soft skin, your hair, your vaginal thickness, wrinkles, and lubrication, your waistline, your urinary control, your sex drive, your bones, your brain, your children, and your insecurity. Do you see how these WHAM videos are helping you to connect the dots to get the big picture? Join me again next week when we'll cover what gets better at menopause. That one will make you very happy. Until then, visit my website, menopausetailor.me. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to my channel, and come back in a week. See you then. Bye.